Okay, so welcome to today's masterclass. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Lindsay Hume. I'm a certified life and empowerment coach for women, just like you, just like me, who are focused on their future, creating exactly what it is they want in the areas of love, life, and money. And these masterclasses I've designed to give you mindset tools and tangible strategies that make reaching your goals inevitable. And today we're going to talk about my favorite topic, which is how to be your future self. So I've been studying this a lot lately, and I'm kind of obsessed. So I guess first off, let's talk about what do I mean when I say future self, because it sounds a bit strange, right? Like, who is that? Is that you tomorrow? Is it you next week? In 6 months, in a year, 5 years, what is it? And it can be all of those things, but for the purpose of this conversation, I want you to think of that person, your future self, as the person who has achieved whatever goal it is that you have in your mind, in your heart right now to create. So probably for most of us, like somewhere between a year and 3 years out. This version of you is different than the present you, right? She's achieved things you haven't achieved yet. She's also failed at things that you haven't even tried yet. She's learned from those failures, developed new skills, and kept going. You can really drop into the experience of your future self by thinking of a past achievement. So something that you've already achieved that at the time when you started, you weren't sure if you would achieve it or how you would achieve it. And then come back to now, right? So you're now the person who has achieved that thing. What would you go back and tell your past self? And that's the best way for me to describe how you get in touch with your future self, right? Is just to really try to imagine what it was like for you back when you were starting something new that you've currently achieved, and what are the ways in which you would talk to your past self, what are the behaviors you would tell her to have, the thought processes, all of these things. So that just kind of gets us into the mindset for this conversation. Most people are living on a day-to-day basis, right? So we're tackling the small tasks, our small goals, right? We're, getting out of bed, making sure that we're fed, or maybe our kids are fed, going to work, picking up your family if you have one, getting home, making dinner, all of these different things. So we're really tackling the day-to-day tasks. But are we focusing on what we need to do and who we need to become to achieve like our longer term goals? So what you do is not as important as who you are, right? Who you become in order to achieve those goals, because who you are is how you do things, if that makes sense, right? So I want to offer to you that you don't need to do more. You're not doing anything wrong or missing certain activities or steps, but that what is required is for you to become the future self version of you that creates whatever goal it is that you want to create right now, right? This is what's really going to determine whether or not you reach that goal. So in other words, in order to achieve any goal, you have to become the version of yourself that has that thing you want now. You have to start embodying her and thinking like her today. So that's what we're going to talk about, is how do you do that? And I'm just pulling up a slide here that you can follow along. There's not a lot on it, excuse me, but I will talk through it and provide more detail. Okay, so the first step in doing this is to really go back to the first two steps of the process that I shared in the last masterclass. And I'm not going to go over it too much today in detail, but if you missed that masterclass, you can go back and rewatch it on YouTube, or just shoot me a message and I'll send you the link. But step one is really about evaluating your current life, right? And looking at all the different areas and where you might want to redecide something. So what that means is you might want to redecide what you do for a living. Maybe you want to redecide where you live. or being married or being single. Any of these areas of your life, how much money you make, you want to evaluate and decide, am I happy with the current state? Would I redecide to be exactly where I am? And if not, that is an area that you can focus on. So once you decide what area you are going to focus on and make a new decision about, you want to turn that desire into a decision. And what I mean by that is you want to say, okay, whatever it is I want to change or upgrade in my life, whether that's my relationship, the money I make, where I live, the work that I do, you want to define in great detail what that looks like for you, right? So if you remember in the last masterclass, I talked about how I decided I didn't want to be single anymore. I wanted to meet, the person that I'd spend the rest of my life with. And I defined in great detail what that person looked like, acted like, thought like, what they ate, how they dressed, all of these things, okay? So that's step 2. Once you understand what it is you want, right, what you're redeciding on and exactly what that looks like, you can move into reinventing yourself. Okay, so that's step 3 on this slide and what we're talking about today. So in this step, we're defining who we need to be to achieve the goal that we have and to put it into practice. So the steps to reinventing yourself or creating your future self is first to define that future self in detail now. And you'll do this in relation to the details that you outlined for your goal, right? So for me, when I outlined all the details of a partner that I wanted and the type of relationship I wanted, I now looked at that goal and defined my future self. Like, who is the woman that has this relationship, right? How does she act? How does she make decisions? How does she dress? What are the habits that she has? All of these things. And you want to define it in as much detail as possible. Now, as you go through this process, all the steps that I'm about to lay out for you, you can always come back and add to this, right? So it doesn't have to be perfect right away, but just kind of download as much as you can about your future self. I'll give you a couple examples. Like if you decide that you want to be healthier, right? You want to be a healthy person, you would describe what a healthy person is to you, right? How does she show up in her life every day? Is she over drinking and overeating and then sleeping in the next day? Or is she drinking a lot of water, exercising, and eating foods that make her feel good? These are all things that you can start to implement immediately in a way that meets yourself where you're at. So for example, that doesn't mean you might start working out for an hour every day, but maybe you say, I can do 15 minutes. Another example is if you want to be maybe you've started your own business and you've never been a CEO before, but now you are. You want to study and look at how CEOs behave and start to implement those behaviors and those ways of thinking into your daily life. So one example is, how does a CEO make decisions, right? Are they making them out of fear and insecurity? Are they reaching out to a bunch of different people in their social circles to make large decisions about their business? Or do they make them confidently and from a place of trust, right? And then you decide what that looks like and start practicing it in your daily life. Start practicing making decisions about how you eat, where you're going to go out for dinner, the movies you're going to watch, all these small things. Start to make them as though you're a CEO. Okay. So you start off small and at a place that meets yourself where you're at right now, but it's the practice. It's getting yourself to do and be the way that future self is going to be acting on a larger scale. The second step is, once you have, and I apologize, I should have moved my screen, but once you have defined your future self, right, you want to start adding, like I said, and implementing these behaviors, right? Scheduling them into your day. So you've defined what they are, and now we're scheduling them into our day. adding the behaviors in that support this future self in your goal. And conversely, you want to actually start removing those that don't support your goal or your future self or are in conflict with it, right? So, for example, again, if you want to be a healthy eater, you might start to eliminate eating after 7 p.m. as an example, right? So you want to remove that behavior that you had because it no longer supports the future goal you had. One thing that I decided to do when not immediately, but while I was starting to run this business and own my own business, was I stopped drinking during the week, right? I had a habit of drinking wine after work, and it might not have been a lot, right? 1 to 2 glasses, but I just found it wasn't serving me, right? I wasn't spending my evenings the way I wanted to. And sometimes it led to me like oversleeping, right? So I really didn't feel like someone who owns a 6 or 7 figure business helping people transform their lives was over drinking during the week. And so I cut that behavior out. So these are just some examples of how you can start to implement and or remove behaviors. Now, I just want to stress again the idea of meeting yourself where you're at. And this is the most tangible way I can think of it. Let's say your future self is a millionaire and you envision yourself wearing the like classic black Gucci dress. You would not go out right now and purchase a black Gucci dress and start wearing it every day, right? Likely, if you're not a millionaire, you can't afford that. However, what you would do is you would find the best black dress that you could afford right now in your current life, and you would start to wear that every day, right? So that's a very tangible example that I can give to show you how to meet yourself where you're at while still being your future self. Okay. So I get that question a lot. It's like, if my goal is to be rich or to have a thriving company and I don't have that money yet, how do I start embodying my future self? Well, you just meet yourself where you at. You start to implement habits and ways of being in a way that is affordable and doable for you and your schedule and your budget now. Okay. If it's easier for you, I would suggest splitting these two up. So for example, you either start by removing negative habits or adding new habits that align to your future self. Some of you might feel like you can go all in and kind of do both at one time. But if you want to split them up, I suggest you start by eliminating unwanted behaviors. This tends to be a bit harder, right? It's like getting out of those old habits, those old ways of being. And so start there. Make small changes each day by removing some habit that doesn't serve your future self. Okay, step 3, and it's really actually related to step 2, but I do want to break them out because they require, different levels of effort. But step 3 is to identify old beliefs and ways of thinking that are holding you back from being your future self and that don't align with who she is, okay? And then I want you to practice thinking in a way that aligns to her and motivates useful action towards your goal. Useful is different than positive, okay? So we don't just want to focus on thinking positively. We want to start thinking in a way that is useful. So as an example, one of the beliefs I had to remove was the thought, I don't know what I'm doing, right? When I started my business. Or still the same thought, but just, a different way of saying it. I need to check with someone else on how to do this. Or I need to check with someone else if I'm making the right decision. And like I said before, CEOs don't check with other people, right? They don't check with random people in their lives. Maybe someone that's highly qualified, more qualified than themselves, but they don't check in like with their mom and their best friend, or even like colleagues that are at the same place that they're at, right? They are decision makers, right? They decide what's good for the company and what's not. They don't hum and haw over it, right? They make the decision swiftly and confidently. And if it doesn't work, they learn from that, they switch up, right? They change what they're doing and they move forward. So this is just one example of a belief system that you might have to work on removing, right? That will hold you back, but there's many out there. Part of what I do when I coach is I help you identify these limiting beliefs, right? Just the other day, I had a meeting with a client and we uncovered one of hers in her first session, actually, that was holding her back from moving forward with her own business. And the thought was, I can't be a good mom and a good employee at the same time. And she really, truly believes that she can only do one or the other. So now her work is to start believing something new. And where we would start with a thought like that is, I can figure out how to be a good mom and a good employee, right? That could be true for her. It's not true for her that she can't even get to, it is possible to be a good mom and a good employee right now. Her brain doesn't even see that as truth, but I can figure it out. Yes, that feels believable to her. So it's maybe not the most positive thought, but it's very useful in helping her move forward. So whatever it is for you, you want to practice being aware of the limiting thought, right? Just noticing when it comes up, and then consciously choosing or deciding what you want to think instead. And then the final step is just simply to practice, right? So be willing to try new things, right? And be willing to fail, but don't stop taking action towards your goal. I was on a walk this morning listening to the Life Coach School podcast, and I heard a great quote from my mentor who does that podcast, Brooke Castillo. And she said, don't let failure be your reason for quitting, right? Never let a failure be your excuse for saying, I'm done. Okay. And it really hit home for me because I was like, that is so obviously helpful and useful and clear. And yet so many times in my life, something has happened where I failed and I just use it as the excuse to quit. It's like, especially before I really decided to quit drinking red wine at night. It was like, I kind of had this desire, but I wasn't really being honest with myself about it yet. And I would not tell anybody but myself, right? Okay, so self, you're not going to have a glass of red wine during the week this week. And then I'd have one, say, on a Tuesday. And then I'd be like, oh, well, guess that's, guess I failed. I'll just drink every other night this week. Instead, what you want to do is have no excuses, right? So we don't have excuses for ourselves anymore. We don't say, well, that's just who I am, or this is just a habit I have. I guess I'm not going to break it. But we do have compassion. So we say, you know what? You didn't do what you wanted to do, right? You failed to stay committed today. You'll pick up again tomorrow, right? Do not let it be an excuse to quit. Failures are necessary. They are actually the thing that teaches you what you need to do and what you don't need to do to reach your goal. So if you have a setback, have compassion for yourself, learn from it, and keep moving forward. Okay, so that's what I have for you today on being your future self now. I know it was a quick one. There's a lot more that goes into this when you actually set out to work on this. So please reach out to me. If you have any questions, you can email me at lindsay@lindsayhume.com. You can go to my website at lindsayhume.com and just click on the contact button and shoot me a message. Thanks for being here today, and I will see you all next week.